It's the school holidays, and time for the boys to be sent screaming and kicking up to the north of Zambia to Kasaba Bay, to an outward-bound camp where cross-country running and being kicked into shape by steely instructors is the order of the day. Chapter 11. Outward Bound. And run wild we did, with a vengeance. In an attempt to build our characters, Ted shipped us off on an outward-bound course. These days, that means you pack your designer suitcase, your smartphone and whatever, and get Mummy to give you a lift to a beauty spot somewhere in the Lake District or Devon, where you can mince about in a yellow canoe, or stay out for one night and find yourself. I had a feeling this adventure was going to be more like an army assault course. At a gathering in our lounge, Ted said, "Prepare a few clothes, boys. A Land Rover will be picking you up tomorrow at dawn to transport you to Lake Tanganyika." Shit, I thought. 600 miles up the dirty, corrugated Great North Road. Barry Unwin was to tag along. His old man was also an army officer who'd come from the Kenyan King's African Rifles. A bedraggled bunch we were, standing with our army kit bags waiting for transport. When this convoy of army Land Rovers with trailers lined up outside our bungalow, Ted ordered us into the trailers. We had to sit on our kit bags while the officers sat in the front. It took days to get there, with hardly a stop. In those times, the GNR was a dirt road. So after fitful sleeping and being hurled about like logs, we arrived, constipated and caked in red dirt at Abercorn, now Mapala. This was what Ted wanted, to make men out of us. None of your lie-ins for his boys. Up at 5, running, press-ups, building bivouacs and generally being big Boy Scouts. I found it to be utterly exhilarating, but Michael really resented the discipline and spent most of his time trying to find ways of avoiding any of it. One of our missions of life-threatening importance was being taken to an island and left to fend for ourselves. "Why?" we asked the steely instructor. "To see if you can survive." "What about Michael?" I asked. "Your brother is being sent back home. Now get ready." A shrug from me. Going home. Bloody hell, I thought. What's he done now? I found out he told the instructor that he could fuck off with his fucking island adventure and stick it his arse. Pig Island was just visible from the camp, a few clicks offshore. Sean, Barry and I scrambled onto a wooden boat and were ferried across the lake and left there to be alone for 3 days with nothing but one hunting knife, our khaki clothes, a packet of biscuits made from volcanic rock, a can of Nestlé's condensed milk, a box of matches, a potato, a tin mug, and a pair of Veldschoens, shoes made of felt with stitching along the soles, also called brothel creepers. No mosquito repellent, but at least some white tablets you dissolve in water to purify it. It had also been rumored that a man-eating crocodile roamed the lake. In recent history, the creature has been named Gustav. He's a massive 6 meters in length and about a ton in weight. Also, he's the largest crocodile ever seen in Africa. They say he's claimed as many as 300 victims from the banks of the Ruzizi River and the northern shores of Lake Tanganyika. "Don't worry, he won't eat you," Barry teased, his white blonde hair and pasty skin looking down at me. "Why?" "He's a man-eater. Doesn't like scrawny teenagers." To add to our mounting fear, we were warned by the grinning, departing, waving sergeant that a lion lived on this island. That first night on the beach had us huddled together around such a monstrous fire we could be seen from the main camp and probably the moon. We polished off 1 can of condensed milk straight away by puncturing it with our communal Bowie knife. We had 2 nights and 3 days to go. There was no contingency to pick us up in an emergency, it seemed. We sat and thought about the lion, gradually dozing as we huddled together. We woke to a startling, cold dawn. It never ceased to amaze me, African dawns. Leaping up from the hinterland, all crisp and promising. The lake stretched away, a flat mirror, little splashes here and there. We wanted to find the lion. Sean wanted to kill it. I wanted some more condensed milk, and Barry wanted to find something with which to catch fish, a task he failed miserably at. So, buggered from lack of sleep, we decided on a circumnavigation of the island, all 10 kilometers of it. No problem. We were used to walking everywhere and set off, eyes wary of both shore and land for attacks by marauding lions and crocs. We found the lion. He was about 100 and had no teeth. Standing there, panting he was, like a pet dog begging for a snack. We did survive that little trip. We even finished the course and had to endure the rough journey back home to Ndola. But Ted wasn't quite satisfied that we'd learned much. I think the contrast between his incredible military discipline and our complete rejection of it prompted him to have one more try. This time he would be the taskmaster, and another sojourn was planned during the next holidays. He went ahead with his battery of men to a famous destination, Kasaba Bay. At a secret location, he and his merry men prepared a sophisticated camp of rondavels, typically divided into officers' mess and other ranks' quarters. We'd have been ecstatic about the impending trip, as it was renowned as a fantastic fishing spot. But we also knew the whip would be out. We groaned at the thought. There was only one way to get to Kasaba Bay. By plane, a military caribou with its ability to take off and land in 60 yards. The ideal choice. Michael sat impassive, brooding at the back, white Panama hat perched askew as he picked the large, dowling nose that supported his dark glasses. As we lifted off, I watched Sean, like a chameleon, transform from his standard luminous white to a pleasant shade of yellow-green. At 2,000 feet, as the pterodactyl-like craft banked sharply above the luscious vegetation, he let his breakfast go like a child with projectile vomiting syndrome. That trip clearly enters my mind every time I smell the stuff now. After several hours, we descended low over the Kasaba airstrip to clear the game. Finally, we landed with a thud. Evening was happening fast, and, like all African dusks, it was dark before we reached the pickup, where our transport boat had just arrived. A slight commotion delayed things, and I noticed some men struggling with a stretcher. On it, a bulky man lay groaning and was whisked to the caribou. Should we laugh or cry? Ted had malaria, and the following 6 weeks of fishing and being waited on by 50 troops was a time to remember. Typical of all his army setups, Ted had arranged for both an officer's and sergeant's mess to be erected on the beach. Basically, this amounted to one bloody great thatched hut and one small one, respectively. Of course, as officers' sons, we were permitted to utilize the one most fitting our position in life. But we preferred the sergeant's mess. Most of our days were spent lounging on a white beach, Michael sitting in a deck chair with a cigarette in his mouth, eyes clad in sunglasses. Meanwhile, Sean and I cast off in a rubber dinghy to troll for Nile perch. But one day, I didn't go fishing and sat with Michael while Sean endlessly trolled. Then suddenly, a commotion in the dinghy caught our attention. Sean was bailing like crazy as the dinghy appeared to be going backwards a couple of 100 meters offshore. There was nothing we could do but watch, of course. Finally, we realized what had happened. He'd caught a monster Nile perch, so big it was dragging the boat along. He finally reeled it in, all 120 pounds of it. Inside its mouth were 2 or 3 lures that had become part of its mouth, like the bark of a tree surrounds fencing wire with age. The lure's eyes kind of peered out eerily from their case of skin. Soon enough it was back to school, back to Dave, Barry and the other scoundrels, back to truancy. I'm at a loss to know how we got away with it. Whole days would be spent in the bush after we'd hidden our school bags. As my appreciation for Africa's wilderness began to swell, I started feeling something I'd never sensed before. A warm cloak embracing me, a belonging of some kind, a stillness, the morning coo-coo from the doves. Maybe it was the climate with its 7-month dry season, followed by the creeping arrival of suicide month, October. Black horizons threatened like an enemy before suddenly racing towards us, scurrying, retreating truants, hurling fat dollops of rain at us in punishment. Miles and miles we walked, lighting fires in our wake, chopping trees down, hunting for mangoes, getting hopelessly lost and staggering in just as darkness fell. Never any questions asked.